Welcome to Discograffiti, the deep dive podcast for music obsessives that gives freaks like you and me the chance to connect with a brotherhood obsessed with rating the entire discography of every single artist and band that ever mattered. I'm your host, Dave Gebroe, and with 3 new episodes each week, you're going to gain a comprehensive knowledge of an act's history and output in the time it takes to listen to one album. Each new guest swings a hard left into an area you either had no idea you needed to know about or know all about and can't believe you're not alone out there. And in this episode, we'll be turning our spray cans on Spirit, Psst, along with our special guest, band biographer Ryan Gabrinetti. This is part 9, the final episode, covering Randy California's creatively listless final years, which produced a handful of problematic records with terrific cherry-picking moments before he tragically lost his life. Here are just a few of the many things that Ryan discusses with Discograffiti in this podcast. The most surprisingly ambitious project on which Randy worked during his last decade, details surrounding the long slide down in Randy's relationship with Spirit, the legitimately tragic and valiant death of Randy California, noteworthy posthumous releases, Spirit's arc as determined by yours truly, our top 3 Spirit albums and our least favorite, and an in-depth deep dive on some of the songs off Rapture in the Chambers, Sea Dream, Tent of Miracles, and California Blues. And away we go then! Now we're at Phase 3, A Slow Fade, 1985 to 1997. What do you think happened here, Ryan?
You know, when the project didn't pay off, when they didn't really hit the way that they wanted it to, I think that took a lot of wind out of their sails. The other thing too is like Mark Andes had other commitments for other touring things. John Locke was, I think in the 80s he was playing with like Nazareth. He was on those records and he toured with them. Jay Ferguson's whole solo arc, you know, is right in the middle of all this. I mean, I don't even think we really touched on like Thunder Island or any of that stuff.
We didn't.
He had those hits in the 70s, and then right around this time period, you know, he had a request or something from a manager to contribute some music to a film. It was like, my friend's doing a film, like, do you have any songs to contribute? Turns out that movie was Terminator. And he basically just went head first into doing soundtracks and, you know, doing TV.
He still does to this day.
Still does to this day. NCIS. I mean, he wrote the theme to The Office.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like he's had all these successes.
From here on in, we're going to really be skipping through here, except for one outlier, which we'll spend a tiny bit of time on. But here we're going to pick out the tracks that make sense. And if there's any stories that are worth talking about, anything that's happening in Randy's life, definitely poke in. But Randy headed to England to record his 3rd solo album next up, which was a contemporary hard rock effort called Restless, which came out in 1985. And that whole thing is a piece of shit, except for one song that I liked, called Camelot. And, you know, this is quite easily the worst record with which Randy California has been involved, I think, maybe completely throughout his whole career. As far as I can tell, except for Camelot, there wasn't much reason for this to have been made. Everything except for Camelot is entirely devoid of inspiration. It's just sad and worthless. I give it 1 star.
You know, I think you're being a little bit harsh. I think this record has some okay moments. I think "Run to Your Lover" is a good song. I think that, like,
bad, real bad.
My other note that I had on Restless is that I think Randy's guitar tone is fantastic on this record. It's the same thing of like, if you're ever in doubt about the material, like his guitar kind of comes to the rescue. Kind of reminded me of like Van Halen in some parts. I think to me this is garbage. I mean, it's like the least. It sounds the least like him out of everything, because even the later stuff has that. And then just in
Randy. Case you think maybe he is still inspired, the next album, his next solo album in 1986 called Shattered Dreams, it starts with a live version of Hey Joe. So if you're starting with a live version of Hey Joe, I mean, that sets your expectations accordingly. Shattered Dreams is on this, which is cool. It falls just short of greatness to me, but that's already been hanging around for years. Yeah. And then, the other two good songs have already existed for years. Downer is a decent redux of the tune from Randy's first solo album, although not nearly as good as the original. And then Handguns, which, why the fuck is he covering and renaming a song that he released 4 years ago on another solo album?
So what I can definitely shed some light on here is that after Spirit of 84, after the solo stuff, Randy's basically on his own. That he doesn't have management. He doesn't have like roadies, it was like, him, usually a bassist, Liberty or, Scott Monahan, the keyboardist, came in. And so they were really like, again, they weren't making a lot of money. If you look at the show list, you start to see the venues change, from big theaters down to clubs to like, basically at the end they're playing at bars.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so like, with something like Shattered Dreams, I could only surmise that he didn't have resources to really execute, because like,
let's be fair, the songs are not good.
Yeah, well, I think that it speaks to a lot of other things that are happening.
I really didn't mind the production on all those underproduced 1970s records, but when we get to this stretch, here's where the facelessness of the sounds that Randy's getting begins to really grate on me. Mm-hmm. This could be anybody, and it might as well be. And for a talent as large as Randy's, that's just a shame. And even beyond that, it's a shame that could have been avoided. Shattered Dreams isn't as offensively, repulsively bad as Restless, but it sure ain't good. And it contains the worst, most affected singing of Randy's entire career. I think there's 3 good songs, and 2 of those are remakes, for Christ's sake. All right, that concludes your free sneak peek into today's bonus episode. If you want to hear the rest of it, just visit patreon.com/discograffiti and either purchase this podcast by itself for $4, or better yet, subscribe at the major tier and get access to Discograffiti's 3 weekly episodes. That's Friday's main episode, the Sunday Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast. That's our podcast within a podcast featuring Patreon members as guests, and your Tuesday bonus episode. Please keep in mind this is entirely how I support my wife and 7-year-old son, so don't risk feeling badly about yourself by not supporting Discograffiti. Become a member so you don't miss a single thing at patreon.com/discograffiti.